On December 4th, 2024, Luigi Mangione, a Ivy League graduate from Maryland, allegedly shot United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside a Manhattan hotel. Motivated by grievances against the healthcare industry, Mangione was apprehended recently in Pennsylvania after a 5-day manhunt and now faces second-degree murder charges. There is a manifesto that's handwritten, but all we have at this point are the images that we've seen broadcast across the world. A man with a mask getting arrested at some point, and a forged New Jersey signature on a license. Hi, welcome to Reading People. I'm Jamie Mason Cohen, and this is my co-host, Michelle Dresbold. We are handwriting experts. Michelle is the author of the best-selling book, Sex, Lies, and Handwriting, and is the leading forensic handwriting expert in the United States. And I, as a handwriting expert, have a TEDx talk with 2.4 million views on how to spot a leader in their handwriting. Let's dive in right now. Before we get to the handwriting, what did you notice about this young man in the images that we saw in the manhunt for him after shooting the CEO?
As we're doing handwriting, we're also doing people reading. And I just wanted to explain how quickly we can read a person and what you, even as a listener, as a viewer, you know about a person in a split second. We just at first saw a little bit of a picture with almost a masked man, and we hardly saw anything. But what did we know? We knew he's white, he's male, he's approximately in his 20s to 30. We know all that just from a little bit. But what else did we know? We know he comes from a wealthy background. You might ask me how we know that just from that little picture. Go ahead, ask.
How do you know that just from an image put out by the NYPD and local authorities?
Okay, when you read a person, you read everything very quickly. And what did we see? This great big white smile. When you have straight teeth, his teeth are either capped or he had braces, and they're perfectly white. You don't have that in a person who grew up poor. We don't have that in someone who's usually an immigrant. So we know he had a pretty well-to-do upbringing just from his smile and his teeth, and you get that right away. So there's something else I wanted to talk about. Now, one thing people don't realize, one of the things people read on you, and one of your most recognizable features is your eyebrows. Now, now I don't want any criminal out there listening to this, but if you ever need to disguise yourself, you could think, oh, I'm going to dye my hair red. People will still know who you are. But if you take away your eyebrows, people will not recognize you. Or you change the shape of your eyebrows, especially if you have significant eyebrows. Now, if he wanted to get away, all he would have had to do was go get waxed or dye his eyebrows lighter, and you would not have recognized him. If you take pictures of people and let's say famous, Elvis Presley, whoever it is, and you take away their hair, you'll still recognize them. Look at pictures and take away somebody's eyebrows, and you will not recognize them. They become unrecognizable. So that was number one thing he did wrong. Was not number one. Number one was shooting somebody. But if you took away his eyebrows, he could have gotten away. People would not have recognized him from that photo.
Yeah, you know what? I haven't thought of that. And the other thing that I noticed was what he was wearing and even the style of backpack.
Right?
They both seem to be deliberately understated, yet well put together and very trendy.
Right. Elegant.
Elegant.
I think somebody with some style, with a better background, does and doesn't even know they're doing, which is exactly what's going to happen in this handwriting. People will don't know what they're doing, and that's what we read.
What about his body language?
He had a straight posture. I mean, I know they say he has a back problem, but he was pretty straight. So to me, that showed somebody who is athletic. So he didn't slump. He went with confidence. His body language showed confidence, I'm here. Don't mess with me.
Yeah, I would add that he was uh, brought in, he exposing his neck area. So it was a real defiant and aggressive stance
Right.
where he's
Well,
almost like looking down at the camera. And usually those photographs, you see people looking straight on, but this was end of that process was rebelling. I am going to push back with a very aggressive energy.
definitely. When you raise your chin, what is the most vulnerable part of your body? It's your neck. So when normally when you're ready to fight, you tuck, when you're thinking someone's going to punch you, you tuck your chin in. When you think, big deal on you, you lift your nose in the air and you expose your neck. And that shows I'm not vulnerable. Ha, on you. So good observation, excellent observation. Yeah.
And let's transition now into the forged signature that he wrote under the name of Mark Rosario on a New Jersey license. Michelle, can we accurately deduce characteristics of a person in a forged document?
Oh, yes. I mean, especially if that's his writing, you don't know what you're doing. You may try to say, oh, I'm going to put a weird capital letter, but you have characteristics that you put in writing that you're completely unaware of. And so whatever the name, and first of all, he picked the name Rosario. What name is that? It's Italian. So when people lie or pick a false name or pick a false narrative, they don't pick something so foreign. They pick something that's sort of familiar to them. So it's not unusual that he actually picked an Italian last name. So that's clue number one.
Clue number one. Let's look at the stroke of the handwriting, the first name and then the last name. So what I'm seeing in the first name is the stroke is mostly straight up and down with just a slight slant to the right.
Are you saying in the name Mark
In this,
that it's straight up and down, or are
in
you
the
talking
name,
about the letter M?
yes.
Okay.
Well, especially in the letter M, it's straight up and down.
Okay.
There is a slight slant to the right in the A and in the K formation, but when we get to the second half of the last name Rosario, it shifts to the right.
Yes.
This is a person who emotionally is shifting from a very cold, calculated, analytical, objective thinker who's deliberately and intentionally thinking, and their mind can, in a heartbeat, shift to a emotionally unhinged place. So they have both of these sides within them, this emotional imbalance.
I agree with you 100%. If you look at this name, Mark Rosario, if you think of a soldier, when you're straight up and down, you're in control. I'm in control. I'm not going to let my emotions take me. Think of a horse that starts running. Notice he starts off, I'm in control. I'm straight up and down. I have control of my emotions. Then as the last name goes, it starts falling, literally falling like a horse running to the right. And what that means is exactly what you said. He's in control, but as life goes on, he can't hold that control anymore, and it falls over emotionally. So when you have a very right slanted handwriting, that's somebody who goes with their emotions. Somebody straight up and down goes with their head. So he starts off with his head, but he can't control it. So exactly right.
And he's got that flat top R. And so one of the things that might be the case in this particular instance, which backs up what we know of him, is excellent hand-eye coordination.
Yes.
How did this young man walk into a public space and target someone and accurately shoot them multiple times, even from close range? Mm-hmm. He didn't have experience, but he definitely is athletic in terms of his ability to connect his eyes to his hand with very deliberate intention. What do you have to say about that?
I agree 100%. Also, when you have an R that's flat at the top, it often means somebody's gifted with their hands. They have a special gift. To be able to shoot a gun, especially a gun that is self-made, as steady and strong as he did, He had to have a very, in a way, a touch with his hands. He also had to also maybe make the gun. He had to have, as you say, very good eye hand coordination. So that is a very good observation. Whenever you see a flat top R, you usually have someone who uses their hands a lot. So that's true. He didn't dot the I in Rosario. Do you have any thoughts on that?
My thought on that is he's in many ways a contradiction from what we've seen on him, and the handwriting backs it up. So if you look at the opposite of that first, he seems to pay extraordinary amounts of detail in the stroke formations. It's analytical, it's exact, it's deliberate, yet he forgot to dot the I. And
Right.
so with what we already know of him is he pays attention to detail in most fronts, but he also, for some reason, overlooks obvious details.
Right. When someone doesn't dot an I, when you dot your I, that's a little detail. When you don't dot it, there's little details that you don't take care of. So here he is, all precise, 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 does everything, to get away, but he takes off his mask. He doesn't dye his eyebrows. He shows too much. So he thinks he's taking care of details. He takes care of many of them, but not, he forgets a few most important ones. So, yeah, in fact, I also think the handwriting looks immature, the
Why do
general
you say
look of
that?
it.
What
It's
stands out?
very slow. It's deliberate, as you say. I mean, he could be slow and deliberate. For somebody of his intelligence, alleged intelligence, it's not. It's very slow. Children write very slowly. The general look of it is almost like a child, not an adult or a teenager.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Once the one thing I'd like to discuss is the pressure of the strokes
Right.
on sample. Now, within context, we don't know the kind of pen he used. Yet, when I looked at this, my initial impression is that he's putting a lot of pressure on the page, and
Yes.
it's a consistent amount of pressure. And so, with the amount of pressure and depth,
Yes.
that could be that he has trouble forgetting, is that his emotions run deep. It's that he feels things deeply. And if you combine that pressure with the angles, which are quite angular throughout, rigid and angular and unforgiving, this is someone who has a long memory, and it's combined with a level of anger in that thinking. What do you have to say about
I
that?
agree exactly. I'm going to add a few points to that. When somebody, let's say somebody writes and you can read their handwriting 3 pages down, their pressure is so heavy. Those people are actually the most likely to commit an act of any kind. They're obsessive. So somebody who might be a bike racer and ride 100 miles a day will write so heavy that you can read it 5 pages down. I found that with, as I talk about in my book, if someone has lighter handwriting, they're less likely to commit an act or a crime. The heavier the handwriting, the more likely somebody is to actually follow through on what their thoughts are.
Yeah.
So he never loosens up. It doesn't. Most writing goes a little lighter, a little heavier. His is heavy throughout, which means when he has a thought, it can't get out of his head. It's obsessive. So anybody who has obsessive qualities will write so you can read it a few pages down. And from the thickness of this handwriting, it's almost a guarantee that that's the type of writer he is.
Yeah, that intensity and not letting things go
Right.
and wrapped up like a coil.
Yes. There's one other clue in this handwriting. It's the S. Do you see that S? It has a very pointed top. When people have pointed S's, it means they're extremely opinionated. So with between the thickness of the stroke, the heaviness of the stroke, with very strong opinions, that's who this person is, even though he didn't even write his own name.
Yes.
Yeah.
And all of these components add up to create the beginnings of a profile of Michelle. What other elements show up?
Well, I think what we might not, or maybe we do know it, his letter O's are completely closed. And people, when you have an O and it's open at the top, it means you like to talk. When it's completely closed, you don't want to say a word. So here's somebody who is very secretive. So I've read or heard that none of his friends, or he didn't tell people beforehand, and they had no clue. When you see somebody in all they're called the communication letters, your A's and O's. When they're completely closed at the top, that person is I call them the spies. They're very, very good at keeping secrets. So it's not surprising that he didn't let people know what was really going on in his head.
Yeah, that's such a insightful point. I might also add the middle letters looks to be filled in,
Yeah.
almost muddied. So, right, so we have the closed, the spy. I wonder if you combine that with those muddied writing, which sometimes can be a form of repressed emotion, then you're adding to the layers and the dimensions of this complicated mind.
You're right. When you have your muddied letters, think of a muddied mind. So what's one of the things you want to watch out for? Let's say somebody's handwriting starts to get blobs. It could mean a physical illness, but it also can mean mental clutter, mental muddiness. It's dark, and so their thoughts are dark. So that's what you look for, especially if you see a change in the writing. It'd be interesting again if we saw his handwriting from 4 years ago, and if it's changed, more muddied. If you see someone's handwriting and their O's and A's start to get darker on the inside and blobs of ink, they're either physically ill or becoming mentally ill.
And we've seen this with dictators, with rapists, with murderers, that really muddy middle zone.
Yes. Yes. In fact, it's one of the common traits you look for in somebody the common traits that you see in this that you would look for in somebody who's explosive are starting off straight and in control, and then falling far to the right, falling emotionally off the deep end. No release of pressure. That means tons of tension, super opinionated, and the muddied letters, that all adds up to somebody who is having emotional and mental problem. Let's just say issues, bad issues.
Michelle, before we wrap up part one of the Luigi Mangione analysis, is there anything that we missed that we wanted to touch upon in this sample from his forged signature?
I think that little bit, we've gotten a lot. I think when we see the 3-page manifesto, we are going to know an awful lot about what went on in this person, no matter what. So I think from just a name, Mark Rosario, we picked up an awful lot, and we're going to pick up an awful lot more.
I'm Jamie Mason Cohen. This is Michelle Dresbold. We are the co-hosts of Reading People. If you want to hear more cutting edge forensics on handwriting analysis to better understand why people do what they do, subscribe and leave a review. Thank you.
Thank you.